The religious and ritual practices of Bronze Age Britain occupy a domain forever shadowed by the absence of written records. Yet archaeological evidence provides a wealth of indirect testimony, allowing us to glimpse certain contours of the spiritual life of this period. Among the most striking phenomena is the deliberate deposition of precious objects into rivers, bogs, and lakes. This practice of ritual deposition became increasingly common from the Middle Bronze Age onward, and the sheer quantity and value of the objects involved makes any explanation rooted purely in loss or accidental disposal wholly unconvincing. Among the river deposition sites identified across Britain, the River Thames stands as the richest. The Bronze Age objects recovered from its waters include hundreds of swords, spears, axes, and other implements, as well as a number of finely crafted metal vessels and helmets. Many of these objects were deliberately bent or broken before being cast into the water. This act strongly suggests a form of ritual destruction rather than simple waste disposal. The scholar Richard Bradley, in his influential work The Passage of Arms published in 1990, systematically analyzed the practice of object deposition across Bronze Age Europe and argued that bodies of water held a special sacred status in the cosmology of ancient peoples, likely conceived as a boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the dead or of divine beings. This framework offers a compelling lens through which to understand these deposits. The swords and axes lying silently on riverbeds were not material losses. They were a toll paid to the world beyond, a public act of submission to some unseen cosmic order. In recent years, however, this serious academic framework has collided with a force from mass entertainment culture. Magnet fishing swept across YouTube and TikTok, drawing in viewers by the hundreds of millions as enthusiasts dropped powerful magnets into rivers and canals, hauling up whatever metal objects lay buried in the sediment below. In 2022, a young woman in England pulled what appeared to be a medieval sword from a tributary of the Thames, and the footage spread rapidly across social media. The comment sections exploded. Millions of people asked, perhaps for the first time with genuine curiosity, why ancient people would throw weapons into a river. Archaeologists seized the moment and used the viral attention to explain the concept of ritual deposition to audiences who had never encountered it before. The results were peculiar. Comments beneath the videos ranged from theories about purification ceremonies after battle to speculation about offerings made to water spirits. Academic interpretation and unfiltered folk reasoning sat side by side in the same threads, and archaeology, as a discipline, found itself thrust into the stream of digital culture, at once popularized and distorted. That distortion takes on a far more serious character when we consider the broader war of narratives that has engulfed the field in the English-speaking world. In 2022, Graham Hancock released Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix, a documentary series in which he argued that a highly advanced prehistoric civilization existed before any known ancient society, and that its traces are scattered across the globe. According to Hancock, mainstream archaeology has, through institutional arrogance and deliberate conservatism, long suppressed, ignored, and actively obscured this evidence. The series immediately became one of the most watched documentary productions on the platform that year. It also provoked some of the sharpest and most publicly visible rebuttals the archaeological community has issued in living memory. The World Archaeological Congress issued a formal public statement, a rare step, characterizing the series as dangerous pseudoscience. Crucially, the statement went further than academic disagreement. It identified a troubling historical kinship between Hancock's narrative and the mythologies of white supremacist lost civilization theories, whose underlying logic has always rested on the premise that indigenous peoples could not have independently developed remarkable cultural achievements, and that some superior external civilization must have guided them. This critique accelerated the controversy dramatically. Supporters and critics collided across Reddit, Twitter, and YouTube comment sections in battles that stretched on for years. Hancock himself responded by arguing in interviews that the ferocity of the academic reaction was itself proof that he had touched something forbidden. This rhetorical move, in which being attacked becomes evidence of being correct, is extraordinarily effective in online environments. It requires no argument. It converts every refutation into confirmation. For scholars working on Bronze Age ritual behavior in Britain, the aftershock of this controversy created a peculiar form of professional hazard. Public appetite for ancient mystery surged, but any scholarly language touching on the unknowable or the spiritually charged could be extracted, stripped of context, and grafted onto conspiratorial narratives about what mainstream institutions refuse to tell the public. The second major controversy bearing on how the English-speaking internet understands Bronze Age culture is stranger in character and, in some respects, more politically consequential. For several years, an anonymous writer known by the pen name Bronze Age Pervert has accumulated a significant following across English-language right-wing online communities. His self-published book from 2018, written in deliberately crude and confrontational English, advocates a return to what it presents as an authentic Bronze Age masculine ideal. The imagined Bronze Age man of this text is physically imposing, oriented toward conquest, contemptuous of the moral constraints of modern liberal society, and spiritually aligned with ancient Greek and warrior archetypes. Contemporary liberal democratic civilization is dismissed throughout as a culture of weakness and decay. The book circulated widely among American conservative intellectuals and far-right communities. Reports indicated it had found readers within circles connected to the Trump administration. Major publications including the New York Times and The Atlantic ran extended analyses of its influence. For archaeologists and historians, this phenomenon created a particular kind of discomfort that is difficult to articulate cleanly. The Bronze Age as a historical concept had been conscripted into an ideological project. It was being shaped into a symbol of prehistory, pre-moral, primordial energy. This appropriation placed professional researchers under a form of invisible narrative pressure. When attempting to describe Bronze Age warfare culture, the veneration of weapons, or the presence of ritual violence in the archaeological record, every sentence carried the risk of being extracted and embedded into a political framework the scholar had no intention of supporting. Archaeology found itself navigating a problem it had not created but could not ignore: how to hold the line between historical fact and political mythology inside a public discourse that was moving faster and with less scruple than any academic institution could match. Returning from the noise of digital culture to the quieter landscape of southern England, the hills carry their own form of testimony. Across the chalk downlands, large numbers of Bronze Age round barrows survive, burial mounds that frequently appear in clusters forming what researchers describe as barrow cemeteries. Analysis of their distribution reveals a consistent pattern. They were built on elevated ground, with wide lines of sight, positioned along ancient trackways, visible from considerable distances. This suggests they served purposes well beyond simple burial. They were landmarks. They were vessels of community memory. They were, in a sense, arguments made in earth and time. The veneration of ancestors, or more precisely the public commemoration of particular ancestors, was very likely a central mechanism for maintaining group identity and asserting territorial claims. To place the bones of the dead on a ridge overlooking farmland and grazing territory was to inscribe into the landscape a statement that could not easily be erased. Our people are here. Our ancestors are here. This land is therefore ours. The barrow was not only a tomb. It was a political declaration made in the most durable material available: accumulated earth and the passing of generations. This ancient logic of territorial assertion through burial has found unexpected contemporary resonance. Advances in ancient DNA analysis have fundamentally reshaped our understanding of Bronze Age population movements in Britain. Multiple genomic studies have demonstrated that at the onset of the Bronze Age, large-scale migrations from the Eurasian steppes, associated with what geneticists call the Yamnaya expansion, resulted in a dramatic replacement of the preceding Neolithic farming population. Within a few centuries, the genetic profile of Britain had been transformed almost completely. This finding generated substantial academic debate about how to interpret the scale and nature of the transition. In the English-speaking online world, the reaction divided sharply. Some seized on the data as evidence of ancient invasion and conquest. Others warned that such narratives were dangerously susceptible to exploitation by far-right groups seeking historical legitimacy for contemporary replacement theories. Archaeological geneticists found themselves in the uncomfortable position of having to manage not only the scientific interpretation of their findings, but also the public narrative surrounding them, aware that any looseness of phrasing could serve as